Welcome, everyone. We're probably going to give it a few minutes just to see if we have a few more people that are joining us, but we'll get started shortly. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We might have some latecomers join us, but we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're here to talk about how you can study business abroad. So this is for, business majors certainly, but even if your major is outside of business and you're interested in possibly taking business classes, we'll touch on that a little bit as well. So first off, we'll start with some introductions. My name is Michelle Laws, and I'm one of the international program coordinators for the WP Carey School of Business. And I will throw it off to Andrew to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Andrew Parady. I'm another one of the international programs coordinators. You'll see in a little bit how Michelle and I divide and conquer as far as advising. And then I will pass it off now to Daniel to introduce himself.
Hey there, I'm Daniel. I'm a senior studying supply chain and economics and international business. I have been Michelle and Andrew's student worker since sophomore year, so for the last 3 years. And then I've studied abroad in Prague the summer of 2018, and then I did an exchange program in Seoul, South Korea, fall 2019.
Okay, so as Andrew mentioned, we do kind of divide up our advising caseload by alpha split. So I advise students that have last names A through K, and he advises students last names L through Z. And students often ask us if we studied abroad when we were students, and yes, we both did. We actually both studied abroad in Germany. We have a funny joke that we are the same person. I'm just older and female, and he's younger and male, but we did a lot of the same things. So that top picture there is me from the 90s, because that's how old I am, but I studied abroad in Germany, and I brought all of that stuff with me. So definitely take my advice and don't take that much stuff with you when you study abroad. And the one below is Andrew with his mom. When he was studying abroad in Germany, they were in Heidelberg on a trip, I believe. And now I want to throw it off to Daniel to talk. I know he already mentioned where he studied abroad, but he's such an asset to us because he did 2 different countries and 2 different, very different areas of the world, and also different types of programs. So just maybe go through and talk through your slides, Daniel, and then I might bring you back later when we talk about different types of programs as well.
Yeah, sounds good. So the first program I did here was an ASU International Business and Prague program in the summer of 2018. So the way that this program was structured was that you go to Prague with about 40 other business students from ASU, and you take Management 302, which is international business. You take the class about 4 days a week for about 3 hours at a time. And then the rest of the time is really yours to explore or go on company visits or do day trips around the Czech Republic. You get really close with that cohort of other ASU students. And then you also get that opportunity to really be in the city and live and experience what else is going on within the culture. Some of my favorite things to do were both take those weekend trips and really get a chance to see what else was going around, and then those day trips. So some of the countries that I visited were Croatia. I went to Dubrovnik, the UK, went over to London, went to Hungary, we did Budapest, and then Český Krumlov, which was another little town within the Czech Republic. And then trying to think if there were other things that we did. Since the program is like relatively short and doesn't take up your whole summer, one of the pros of it was we got to travel around before and after the program. I think I spent about a week and a half before and 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, just going around and seeing other places, which was super fun. Yeah, and I think the coolest thing about the Prague program itself is how much is really going on within the city. You really don't have to go very far to experience a lot of really cool things. The university is close to the dorms. You have that built-in network of ASU resources there, as well as a really exciting city. I'd say the biggest takeaways I had in terms of advice for people going is be open to a lot of cultural differences. It's kind of shocking when you first go abroad and it's not necessarily a vacation, right? Like you're living there, you're going grocery shopping, you're playing around with currency conversions, you're like trying to communicate with people who don't speak English natively. It's a little bit of a culture shock for a lot of people. So just be open to trying new things. And then be patient. Things are a little bit slower in Europe, and it's kind of nice if you just let it happen to you. Like trains might not come exactly when you think, and they may not have an updated schedule, or you may be sitting at a restaurant wondering why your check's not coming. It's just part of the deal. You end up getting used to it, and you come back to America and think like, oh, why was I so rushed everywhere I went? So yeah, definitely a lot of people love this program, and it's super exciting, and it typically runs every non-pandemic summer. So totally happy to answer any questions on that too. And then for my full semester program, I went to Korea. So I went to the Korea University Business School, KUBS, and this was such an exciting program and completely different than my Prague experience. One of the main differences I'd say is being on an exchange program versus an ASU sponsored program is that you have a little bit more independence to really figure it all out on your own. So when it came to finding a visa, I went to the consulate. When it came to finding housing, I Googled around and asked resources from my Korea advisor. And then once I got there, I was able to choose my own classes and meet my own friends and really kind of live a more, I guess, like life of a student who went to that university, which was really cool. Since there was so much going on in Seoul, I didn't end up taking as many weekend trips as I did when I was in Prague. So Korea, and then I went to Japan 3 times. So I went to different parts of the island. I went to Kyoto, Osaka, Fukuoka, and then I did a week in Vietnam during what was our fall break equivalent. One of my favorite things was getting to live in a share house. So I always describe it as just like the Jersey Shore house. It was like wood paneling, duck phone vibes. Like we had our own rooms, and then we shared a couple bathrooms and a kitchen and whatnot. And it was a super great way for me to get out there and immediately have a built-in network of 12 or 13 other kids. And it was just a really good experience. Advice for exchange programs in particular, I would say, is definitely stay organized. You're essentially applying to another school when you do a program like this. So you're writing an essay and you are looking for that visa and you're looking for your housing and looking to get connected with an advisor. So just be prepared for new things. Always ask questions. I think what I've noticed most about some of the people that were there or people that I've talked to from other study abroad programs is when you're going abroad, you need to make sure that you're always on the same page as everyone else and that you're learning a lot and whatnot. So especially when you're in a class, like don't be afraid to speak up or try something new. And then branching out. So right here, this photo is with a group of my roommates. And it was a really cool experience because they were all coming from different countries. So Canada, France, Germany, one other American, and New Zealand, I believe. So that was super cool to get that chance as well. I also really like doing a full semester because it really gives you the chance to fully experience everything and really get some touch points there within the country. Like I built some lifelong friends from both the school in Korea as well as other study abroad friends, which was really exciting as well. And happy to chat about either one of those programs or the difference between the two too.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to a few study abroad facts for everyone. So all business majors can study abroad. It doesn't matter if you're supply chain, if you're accountancy, if you're business comm, any major can study abroad. That's no problem. If you're non-WPC majors, you're outside the School of Business and you want to take some business classes, that's definitely possible as well. You have to be a little bit mindful of prerequisites though. So for all WP Carey majors are taking all the same kind of lower division skills courses. So depending on the program, if you're not in WP Carey, you might be more limited in the business courses that you can choose because of the prereqs that they require. But if you have any questions about that, Andrew and I are here to help. Sometimes they don't have any prereqs on their classes. So they're like, you want to take it? Go ahead. So that could be a program that would work really well for you if you're not in business. Some students are afraid to study abroad because they're afraid it's going to add on extra time to their degree completion. That's definitely not the case. Andrew and I work really hard to find programs that are going to fit within your 4-year program of study. So we're looking at what are those classes that they offer? Are they similar in content to classes that we offer at ASU? If so, let's get them evaluated so that you know when you go to KUBS, like Daniel did, if I take this class, it's going to transfer back as Management 300, which is a class that I need anyway. So we're definitely working really hard to make that happen for you. Some students are afraid of the cost, and there certainly are expensive programs, I'm not going to lie, but there's plenty that are affordable as well. So, some of them are similar in cost to what you'd be spending for a semester here at ASU. There's some that are even cheaper than going to ASU, especially if you're an out-of-state student or an international student. We also offer scholarships. So in WP Carey, we have a specific WP Carey Study Abroad scholarship that we offer each term for just our students that are planning on doing a study abroad program. There's also tons of like federal awards, like there's a scholarship called the Gilman that's specifically for students who are receiving Pell Grants. The Study Abroad Office offers scholarships. They have diversity scholarships, local to global scholarships. And there's also lots of private ones as well. So there's a whole bunch of resources that you can look into to get scholarships to help fund your study abroad experience. Some students think they can't study abroad because they don't speak a foreign language. Well, some programs will require that, but most of them don't. Most of them, the language, especially of business, is English. So they're, even if you go study in Barcelona, they're going to offer tons of classes taught in English. So that's not a problem. We also offer plenty of programs in English speaking countries like the UK, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, etc. So definitely don't let the language be a barrier. You can also maybe go and just intensively study a language. So maybe that's a skill that you want to gain. You really want to learn Spanish because you're doing human resource management. You think that would be, a good skill to have. There are summer programs where you can go down to Argentina and just study Spanish for the whole summer. So there's lots of different things that you can do. We also have all programs of all shapes and sizes. You can definitely do the semester program, summer program. Daniel did 2 of those, so 1 of each. We even have programs that are even shorter term. We call those GIEs, which are usually in breaks, so like a spring break program or a program that would happen before or after a fall or spring semester. And we go all over the place. So there's most places that you'd probably be interested in. We have a program that can work for you. So again, that's what Andrew and I are kind of here to help you with, is to narrow all of that choice down. Okay, and then why should you study abroad? Well, the first #1 reason in my book is super amazing and awesome. It's, it's a really great experience. I know that when I studied abroad, like before I studied abroad, I was super introverted. I let my parents take care of everything for me. But, when you're an ocean away, you just kind of start to have to figure things out. So it really helped me grow as an individual. It grew in my confidence. So I learned a lot about myself and about how American I was by leaving America, so it was a really, really good experience. Besides the personal benefits, though, there are real good business reasons to study abroad. You get a lot of transferable skills by having this experience. You're going to improve your communication. What are employers looking for? They're looking for people who are flexible, adaptable. That's definitely skills you gain by doing study abroad. Whether you leave the US or not for work, you're going to be working in a global economy and with global coworkers. So to have those cultural competencies that you gain by doing a study abroad program, those are really valued. So it's going to prepare you for that diverse and international workplace. Also, how they do business in South Korea is very different from how they do business in the States, so you're going to learn those kinds of skills as well. So I know that Daniel talked a little bit about this already, but just to kind of reiterate, there are 3 main types of programs that are offered through the ASU Study Abroad Office. We have faculty-directed and global intensive experience programs. So these are programs that are designed by a school or department at ASU. So they'll take a group of ASU students, teach an ASU class just in an overseas location. So the International Business in Prague program that Daniel talked about is one of those. You can definitely do a business one. We have other ones as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But there's also, other schools and departments that offer these types of programs too. Like if you're a Barrett student, Barrett has a ton of cool study abroad programs. If you're a sustainability student or doing a sustainability minor, they have their own programs. So, you don't have to limit your thinking to just business. There's lots of cool opportunities, and we just want you to have an experience that's going to be, the most beneficial for you. Exchange program was South Korea, the South Korea program that Daniel mentioned. So yeah, you do really have to be more independently minded because you are going to have to do most of the heavy lifting on your own. So you do have to find your own housing. You do have to figure out your visa. Not that you're not going to have, support along the way, but we do say this is for more independently minded students. And again, some of the pros of doing a program like this, though, is that you are really just kind of going to that school. So it's really easy to meet local students, and you can have that flexibility to kind of, live your life as you want to while you're there. Partnership programs are kind of in the middle. So this is where we work with a program provider and they will package a study abroad experience for you overseas. So they find your housing. They will take you on a couple of excursions. Typically, they have 24/7 on-site support. So if you lose your passport on the weekend, you've got someone to call and they will help you. There's someone right there. So, some students will feel more comfortable having that extra level of support in country. So for those, oftentimes you're paying a program fee, which includes all of those services. So in an exchange program, you're paying your regular ASU tuition rate as you always do, and then just your cost of living directly to the program overseas. Whereas partnership programs, you pay more at the beginning, but you're getting more for that money. And oftentimes for out-of-state students, partnership programs are going to be the more affordable option. Your in-state student exchange program is going to be a more affordable option. So just some things to think about. There's pros and cons to all of these types of programs. I had a student who did 3 different GIEs. So he wanted to go to 3 different places and he didn't have time to do, 3 semester programs, but he did, business in Costa Rica. He did a business in Australia, and he did a program outside of WP Carey in Israel. So that's how he wanted to have his study abroad experience. So there's, definitely ways to do multiple programs if you'd like. And Andrew and I are here to kind of help you figure out which one is going to be the best fit for you as well. So we're happy to have those conversations with you. Did you have anything to add on that, Daniel, about like the differences?
Yeah, I think another thing that you touched on too with going to different locations is that that's totally an option as well. I know with Kappa, you're able to kind of create your own blocks. I had a friend who was able to go to London and Rome and Copenhagen and was able to make it super customizable for herself and see more chunks. So whether it's either doing the shorter GIEs or doing, blocks of different semesters, it's definitely possible to see different parts of the world if that's of interest to you as well.
Okay, so I'm just going to highlight this a little bit because Daniel did such a great job describing it better than I could. But yeah, this is our very popular International Business in Prague program. It usually runs mid-May through mid-June. So as Daniel mentioned, it's not the whole summer. So if you need to come back and take Session B class, you can do that. Or, in my mind, hopefully you'll be able to stick around Europe and travel around a little bit more at the end of it. But it's a very unique program because it's almost like a mini exchange where we're taking a group of students over and you're going to have that support. We send an ASU faculty member and staff member along with you, but you actually take your class with local faculty at the University of Economics there. So you do get even more of a global mindset, I think. And what better place to take Management 302 Principles of International Business than in an international location. So typically we've limited this program to business majors only, but we are going to open it back up. So as long as you meet the prereqs for the class, you can apply to this program. We do give preference to WP Carey majors though, but if you're outside of business, this is one that you can apply for. So this is a new program that we haven't actually had the chance to run yet because COVID got in the way a little bit, but we're excited to offer it next summer, hopefully. So this is a marketing program and it's called International Advertising and Branding from the Inside Out. So on this program, you would get credit for Marketing 494, which is a 3-credit-hour upper division marketing elective if you're a marketing major. But it's a really cool program because it's centered around the Cannes Lion Advertising Festival. So just like they have a film festival in Cannes, they also have one that's centered around advertising, and like all the big wigs go. So tons of really high level companies like Apple, Google, like all these companies go there and they talk about how to brand and advertise. So it's a really good experience. You do have to have 3.0 minimum GPA for this one, and you have to have completed one of the marketing classes. So marketing 300, 302, 303, 390, or 395, or at least be enrolled in it, the semester prior to the participation in the program. And you get to spend a week in Cannes at the festival. So you do most of the classwork before you go virtually, and then you'll do the week festival in Cannes, and then a little bit of work at the end, like reflection papers, things like that. But it's going to be an awesome program. Another of our programs is the GIE program, Business in Costa Rica. So this is our very first GIE, and it's a great one. We spend spring break in Costa Rica and we study the business of coffee. It's super interesting to look at business around one product, because we'll go out to farms, we'll see how they plant it in the ground, we see how they get it out of the ground, we see how they process it, how they package it, how they market it, talk about trade issues, supply chain issues, sustainability issues. So we cover a lot, and it's all pretty much based around coffee. So if you like coffee, this is a great program to do. We go to different farms out there. This is also a very popular one for our online majors, especially our Starbucks students, because we do go to the Starbucks farm in Costa Rica called Hacienda Alsacia, and it's absolutely beautiful. That top picture was taken there, but it's a really fun time. This program will work as the study abroad experience for the International Business Certificate, which we'll talk about in a bit. But in addition, just to the coffee, we do a tour to a waterfall gardens, which is absolutely beautiful, and talk about the business of tourism there. And we also have a couple of sustainability lectures built in for next year. So we'll be excited to offer this one again, hopefully in 2022. And then I want to talk a little bit about exchange programs. So Daniel did KUBS, but there's loads. So there's tons of exchange programs all over the world that will work for business students. KUBS is on there, but I also wanted to mention like Copenhagen Business School is another option if you want to go to Europe. We have a business specific program in Manchester. You don't have to limit yourself to the business specific exchanges either. Like we have a bunch of exchange programs in Australia, for example. None of them are business specific, but they all teach business classes. So if you're interested in doing an exchange program, just let me or Andrew know, and we can kind of look at where you want to go and see if there's a good program that would be a good fit for you. I mentioned this a little bit, but there's non-business options as well. So like if you wanted to do a Barrett program and get 6 credits of honors credit done, in the summer in 3 weeks, you can do that. If you want to go study another language intensively, you can do that. There's a really cool program in Antarctica that I super want to go on. I mean, it's more sciencey based, so it's not really for business students, but it's just so unique. I like to mention it. If you're, a tourism student or a business and tourism student, they have a cool program in Australia and Fiji. Semester at Sea is one that you may have heard of. This is one of our expensive programs, but it's where you board a cruise ship and you travel all over the world. So you'll take your classes on the ship and then you'll dock at different places and learn about, go to the places that you've been learning about on the ship. So that's a really unique one too. I think Daniel mentioned Kappa, but they're our internship provider, and we are really fond of this program because, of course, as business students, you know how important internships are. But sometimes it can be hard to get that first one, right? So, maybe you've joined a couple student organizations, but it's hard for you to make that connection to get that first internship. Well, you can do an international internship with Kappa. They have in-country locations in London, Sydney, Barcelona, Buenos Aires, and Dublin, where they have business courses available, and you can do an internship along with the business courses. So this program works out really nicely. And how it works is part of the application process, you submit your resume, your cover letter, let them know what it is that you're interested in doing. And then based on your skill set, your experience, they will find a placement for you overseas. So once you get done, you've got this really cool international internship on your resume, and then that makes you even more competitive for internships back here when you get home. They've also pivoted a little bit in the pandemic, and they've been offering virtual options, which are really great. Like, especially for online majors, I think it can be hard for them sometimes because they're probably already working and, have school as well to do an internship. Well, they have virtual internships. So same kind of process. They will just connect you with an overseas company, and you will do all of your internship virtually. So that's another cool option that, silver linings that have come out of this time. But yeah, so you can get 3 to 6 credit hours of internship in your area of business that you want to learn about. So a lot of times students are like, when should I study abroad? What are the deadlines? So if you're a business student, I would say typically the time we recommend to go is if you want to do a semester program, is second semester of sophomore year, first semester of junior year. And the reason we recommend that is we want you to have most of those lower division skills courses completed before you study abroad, because they're going to be prereqs for classes you're going to be taking abroad. They're definitely prereqs for classes you need when you get back, and we still want you to graduate in that 4 years, right? So that's important to us. So we want to make sure that you can graduate on time. So it's not a hard and fast rule. Sometimes you can go a little bit earlier, sometimes you can go a little bit later. It might depend on your major. Like marketing and management, you might want to have marketing 302 done before you study abroad. So maybe you're going a little bit later. If you're accountancy supply chain, you probably want to go earlier because it's really hard to find those classes abroad. So it can be unique to your situation as well. Like maybe you came in with 60 credits of dual enrollment and you've got some flexibility and you can kind of go whenever you want. So there's always different situations. If you're going on the shorter term programs though, I would just say that's a little easier, a little more flexible. You typically just have to meet the prereqs for the program, and you can go whenever you want because you're typically taking classes to get ahead. I will say that deadlines are specific to each program. So the best strategy is to go ahead and check the website as to when each program is due. For exchange programs, just to let you know, though, they do have a priority deadline because with exchange programs, there's a limited amount of spots. So if you really want to go to Manchester, you definitely want to apply by that priority deadline. Also with faculty directed programs, sometimes they can fill up before the deadline. So like if you really want to go to Prague, probably best to save that program to your favorites and apply for it as soon as that application becomes available. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we do offer financial aid and scholarships as well. So WP Carey has their own. You can also use your existing financial aid and scholarships. So if you have like a New American University scholarship, like the deans, the presidents, the provosts, if you go during a semester, you can still use that financial aid towards the cost of this program or whatever your program is. A lot of our Obama scholars will use their Obama scholarship to study abroad. And then you can apply for additional funding as well. The one thing to know about your scholarships, though, is that they typically won't work in the summer, and that's not a study abroad rule. That's just a financial aid rule, right? They're tied to the academic year. So a lot of students are like, oh, I'll go in the summer, it's cheaper, and it usually is, but it's a little bit more out of pocket. So something to consider. I kind of think you get more bang for your buck by doing a full semester program because you have access to all the financial aid and scholarships you already have. But there's definitely additional scholarships you can apply for if you want to do one of those shorter term programs or a summer program as well.
All right, Michelle, I had a question, and so I wanted to have you expand on it a little bit. Can you go back over in a little bit more detail the differences between partnership and exchanges and the cost differences? We had a question about that. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So in an exchange program, how that works is you will pay your exact ASU tuition rate. So if you're an in-state student, you pay the same rate of tuition. If you're an out-of-state student, you pay that rate of tuition. Then you would pay for all of your other stuff like your housing, your flight over, your day-to-day expenses, extra travel on your own, that would be all coming from you in that country. So with exchange programs, if you want to do a really affordable one, best to look for a city that's affordable, because you can do an exchange program in the UK and that's still going to be way more than you would spend at ASU, just because, pound versus the dollar, and then it's just a more expensive place to live. But if you did an exchange program in Prague, you could be saving money because it's a much lower price point. So generally location is very much going to drive the cost of how much that program is for you that semester. If you do a partnership program, you pay a program fee, which will include your tuition, your housing, your excursions. It doesn't always include housing. It almost always does, though. About 99% of the time includes your housing. Like they have the 24/7 on-site support. Like CAP is a good example of a partnership program. So, they find the internship for you. So that's part of that cost. So you're paying more at the beginning, but then you wouldn't have a cost for housing because you've already paid it. So, that's why for out-of-state students, the partnership programs are usually more affordable because you're paying that higher rate of tuition. So sometimes the program fee is pretty similar to what you're paying in out-of-state tuition, or more, a little bit more, but not that much more. But it includes your housing as well. There's a lot of great resources on the Study Abroad website. They even have a section called Comparing Low-Cost Programs. So for whatever category you are, in-state, out-of-state, they will, tell you, oh, if you do this program, it's similar in cost to a semester at ASU. So that's a really good resource. They have a whole page on scholarships that you can apply for. And every program on their website will have what's called a cost sheet, and it will explain the cost for that individual program. So yeah, they'll have the program fee, or just the few fees that go along with an exchange. And then they have also listed estimated non-billable costs. So these are costs associated with the program, such as your flight over, your meals, that kind of stuff. Below it. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of what you should budget for and plan for. Just keep in mind their estimated costs. You could spend more, you could spend less, but they just kind of want to give you an idea of kind of how the cost of living is in that location. The other good thing to remember is that you don't have to pay it all at once, because sometimes you look at that sheet and you're like, oh, that's expensive. But you also want to remember that those are costs that you have at ASU as well. So like if they have a cost for meals, you're eating when you're here. So you just kind of want to think about like, oh, what do I really spend for my whole semester of housing and everything at ASU? And then if you need a program that's comparable to that, there's definitely those resources that I mentioned that can help you find that. Did you have anything to add on that, Daniel, as far as like cost or what you've spent, how you budgeted?
Yeah, I think what I noticed in both Prague and Korea is that, at least in Tempe, the area around Tempe is very expensive. Food is expensive. Everything is just expensive. And most foreign universities seem to be better set up for students. So you could get a large coffee for $1.50 in Korea, or you could take public transportation for free in Prague because it was part of your program cost. So there was a lot of ways to stretch a dollar a little bit more outside of ASU. And so that definitely made it easier. Both in Prague and Korea, I spent probably about 30% less than I do in a normal month in Tempe, just because most things were just a little bit more cost effective for what you could do. Obviously, that cancels out a little bit sometimes when you are taking weekend trips and whatnot that you might not take if you were back in Tempe. So that's something to also plan for as well. But I would say both for Prague and Korea, I was able to take most flights for about $100 and then get a hostel for about, $20 to $50, depending on where you were going. So nothing was too overwhelming or sticker shock.
Yeah, I saw that question in the chat, which Andrew answered, but just as a reminder, you can definitely use your scholarships, but it really only applies in fall and spring semester, not summer. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the International Business Certificate, because this is something that you have to study abroad to get, but once you do, it's pretty easy to complete the requirements. So this works for business majors, but also if you're not in business and you wanted to add the certificate and get some business background, this is a great way to do that because non-WP Carey majors are eligible as well. But they have a core class, which is either international business or international econ. You do a couple of upper division global business electives. You do some credits in non-business global is what we like to call them. So those are classes outside the School of Business that are global in focus. Those can be history classes, literature classes, political science classes, all kinds of good stuff. And then there's a language requirement, but most students have that done already because if you did 2 years of the same foreign language in high school, we'll accept that. And then the only other requirement is to study abroad. So it's a really nice value add to put on your resume, certainly. But I also think it's a nice academic way to talk about your study abroad experience. If you're, you are interviewing for an internship or a position, you can say, because I spent this semester in Barcelona, I was able to take 9 credit hours of business classes focused on, on international topics. So it's just kind of a nice academic way to do it. So a lot of students, especially these semester programs, get this without even trying, but definitely a good option if you wanted to get some additional, business curriculum on your resume. So we do just want to be mindful that, right now is not the most normal time for study abroad. So if you have any questions about COVID-19 or considerations about that, we're definitely here to have those conversations with you. The study abroad office as well. So, unfortunately, things are not, as normal as they have been in the past. So there might be more travel restrictions or health and safety restrictions. So definitely want to make sure that you are aware of all of those, deadlines, policies, withdrawal deadlines, those kinds of things. So as you're planning your study abroad, my sincere hope that is now that with the vaccination rollouts, we're around spring, we're going to start looking a little bit more back to normal. But definitely ask about these things because we want you to be very comfortable and happy with your study abroad experience.
Could I ask some question in this part?
Sure.
Yes, in this part, I have one question about COVID-19. I'm one of the future students, which decided to go to ASU, Falcon School. Now I have one question. I have to travel from Barcelona to that location. My question is that in most of the advertising in Instagram notify that the people who vaccinated by COVID, they could transmit the COVID to other people who didn't use the vaccination. Is it true or not? That confused when someone vaccinated, why that person, he or she, could transmit the COVID again? My question is that.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I'm not a doctor, unfortunately, so I don't think I can speak to like the efficacy of vaccines or how they're transmitted, unfortunately. What I can talk to you about is more like what you might have to consider as studying abroad with COVID around. There's tons of research out there, though, about vaccines and things like that. So I would just encourage you to maybe ask a health professional if you have questions about how vaccines work. But did you have any questions about, how COVID-19 has impacted study abroad, if you're allowed to study abroad now, anything like that, we're happy to answer.
And finally, I would like to notify something important for all the researchers. As my personal research from Iran to Barcelona, the honeybee venue is one of the effective ones. After testing my blood, they found the antibody of my blood is so high. I published these things to many scientists, but most of the scientists deny these things, but that's true. If United States to be powerful, same as previous time, and that's a good idea. Some sources in this cycle, and that's it. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Have a great time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I think that's the end of our formal presentation. I think that's the end of our slides. This is how you can reach us. So you can email us. Our email addresses are there. If you want to schedule an appointment with either me or Andrew, you can do that through Advising SOS at that link. But we have plenty of time. So if anybody else has additional questions that they want to answer, feel free to throw them in the chat or just unmute yourselves and go ahead and ask. And it could be a question for any of us. Does anybody have like a desired location they've been thinking about? Daniel, do you have a fun story to share? study abroad story?
Let me think. I think the first day that I got to Korea was just so miserably hot that I ended up meeting like everyone at every convenience store because it was just so humid. So that was at least a good little way to like get yourself out there because I had to quickly, figure out how to shop and use currency and what the value of a dollar was in Korean won and whatnot. So that's one good perk of traveling abroad, I guess, in the summer is that you're gonna have to get a lot of water when you first get there.
I'll share one from my experience. So I remember I studied a full year in Germany, and I think I'd had up to German 202 before I went. And I was like, yeah, I got this, no problem. And then as soon as I got off the plane, I was like, what did I just do? Like, I hardly understand these signs. I like had this moment of panic. I was all by myself. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I even gonna handle this? But I can tell you by the end of the year, I had local Germans coming up to me asking for directions, and I was telling them where to go in my town in German. And it was just an awesome, awesome full circle moment. Andrew, do you have a fun story you want to share?
No, yeah, I was thinking of talking with Nathan earlier. Nathan, we had talked about some differences in the cost and things like that. Was there anything in particular you wanted to look through as far as like examples of programs where we could look at some of the cost sheets?
I was mostly just curious about how the scholarships, like the New American one that Michelle mentioned, how that like interacts with the costs for the different programs. But I think that was pretty much answered.
Yeah, so as Michelle talked about, like specifically for partnership programs and being an out-of-state student, I think it would be more cost effective to do that type of program. There are some where the cost of the program is actually the same as what your tuition charge is, but housing is included. So you're not really making money because you've got to pay for your flight to get over there, and but it really does all kind of even out, as opposed to some of them that are a little bit more expensive or just in London or losing some money on the cost of living or the exchange rate or things like that. So yeah, just recommend checking in with Michelle to look through some of those options and schedule an appointment through Advising SOS. But there's plenty of low cost options there, and out-of-state students, I think, have great opportunities and it's a great sell to your parents because you're like, hey, we're going to have to pay the same, and I can be in a different country and do that and not have to pay a bunch of extra money for it. So. Anyone else have any other questions before we wrap up?
Actually, yes, I have a question. In regards to the Korea University, I was just wondering, I don't know who went to Korea, but I forgot. What was their research process in looking for housing?
Yeah, definitely. I found that to be hard. So if you're in the middle of that, I totally get that because some of those websites don't always transfer over to English very well. There were a couple main styles of housing that I noticed. The first was goshiwons. So that is, I guess, their equivalent of a dorm where you probably had your own room and a very basic mini kitchen within there and a desk. So that was probably about like 200 or 300 square feet. And then there was maybe some common spaces. That one was preferred for people who tended to want to be like really close to campus and maybe wanted something quiet. They typically didn't allow guests, but they were in really good proximity and whatnot. And so that was a really popular option. For me, I did a share house and I found that one just by looking that up. I had just Googled housing so many times, I found something like that. And that was study abroad specific housing, not related to the university. If that's something you want to, I can send you the name too, if you're like in the process of looking for housing. That was pretty popular. There were a few share houses. And then there were a few apartment complexes that specialized in international students that were a little bit closer to the city center, if that was something that you were looking for, rather than being close to the university. But I would say pretty much everyone I met lived within walking distance to the university, and either in a share house or a goshiwon.
Yeah, and depending on where you go, that process is going to look a little bit different, right? So like when I studied abroad in an exchange program, I had to arrange my own housing, but it was just the dorms at the university. So I went, did that through the university. So a lot of times that's what it is. They'll have, a dorm that's specific for international students, and that's kind of where you go. You go to a website, you sign up, you're done. Sometimes it's a little more complicated. Sometimes that housing goes like that and you might miss out. So then you got to figure something else out. Our previous student worker, he did an exchange program in Madrid, and they did have, cheap housing and dorm housing associated with the university. He was like, but I want to live in the city center. I would rather commute to school and like have that life in the city center. So he went with a couple of friends and they just did an Airbnb for the semester. There's lots of different things that you can do. And depending where you go, like I said, it's going to look a little bit different. Some are more set up and easier, and some are probably like with Daniel, so a little bit more confusing, kind of have to figure it out a little bit on your own. The study abroad office can also always connect you with students who have gone on your program previously though. So, like if you don't go to KUBS, we can't send you to Daniel, but they'll have someone who went to your selected program, and they can kind of let you know their strategies, what they did, and have resources for you.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. It sounds great. Yeah, because I'm currently interested in 2 programs at Korea University and Copenhagen in Denmark. And I'm already doing research because I was thinking, I already spoke to somebody I think from study abroad, and they mentioned that preferably for me to study my second year, sophomore year. So I'm doing all that research, trying to get everything planned as much as I can. So I think I'll just schedule a meeting with one of you two to continue which one is like best for my major.
Yeah. Well, and I always tell students I'm absolutely horrible at helping you decide where to go, because I think everywhere is fabulous, and you just picked 2 of my favorite locations. But we can talk about, kind of the differences between the 2. And like you very rightly said, which one's going to work best for your major, right?
Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Did anybody else have any questions? Okay, if not, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to reach out with any questions that you have, and hopefully we'll get you somewhere fabulous soon.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.